My name is Colin, and what happened to me 3 years ago is the reason I never jog alone anymore, especially not at dawn. I used to be one of those people who lived for that early morning run. You know the type. Up at 5:30 a.m., out the door by 5:45, hitting the trail before the world woke up. There was something peaceful about it. The silence, the fog rolling through the trees. Just me, my breath, and the rhythm of my feet on the pavement. I lived in a small town in Oregon, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and nothing bad ever really happened. The trail I ran was about 4 miles long, looping through a dense forest area before circling back to the main road. I'd been running it 5 days a week for almost 2 years. But that morning, everything felt different. It was early November. The fog was thick, thicker than usual, like a heavy blanket draped over the entire trail. Visibility was maybe 10, 15 feet ahead at most. I remember thinking it was almost too foggy, that maybe I should just head back, but I didn't. I kept going. About 1.5 miles in, I noticed something. Footsteps. Not mine. Behind me. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The fog does weird things to sound, right? Makes everything echo strangely. But no, these were deliberate, rhythmic, matching my pace almost perfectly. I slowed down. The footsteps slowed down. I sped up. They sped up. My heart started pounding, not from the run, but from something else, something primal. I glanced over my shoulder, but the fog was too thick. I couldn't see anything. Just gray. Just that suffocating, endless gray. I told myself it was another jogger. Someone else crazy enough to be out here at this hour. But then, why weren't they passing me? Why were they staying exactly the same distance behind? I decided to test it. I stopped completely, pretending to tie my shoe. The footsteps stopped too. My hands were shaking. I stood up slowly, every nerve in my body screaming at me to run. But I didn't. Not yet. I turned around and called out. Hello? Is someone there? Nothing. Just a fog. And then a sound. Not footsteps this time. Breathing. Deep, raspy breathing. Close. Too close. I bolted. I don't think I've ever run that fast in my life. My lungs burned. My legs felt like they were going to give out. But I didn't stop. I could still hear it. The footsteps, faster now, closing the distance. And that breathing, getting louder, more frantic. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The trail curved sharply to the right, and I remember thinking if I could just make it around that bend, I'd be close to the main road, close to safety, close to people. I rounded the corner at full speed and ran straight into him. I crashed into something solid, and we both went down hard. I scrambled backward, gasping, and finally got a look at him. He was maybe in his 60s. Thin, pale, wearing a stained gray hoodie and sweatpants. But it was his face that made my blood run cold. He was smiling, not a normal smile. A wide, unnatural grin that stretched too far across his face. His eyes were bloodshot, wild, and locked directly onto mine. You run fast, he whispered, still smiling. But I'm faster. Before I could react, he lunged at me. I threw up my arms, shouting for help, kicking at him with everything I had. My foot connected with his jaw, and he stumbled backward just enough for me to scramble to my feet. I ran again. This time, I didn't stop until I reached the parking lot where my car was. I fumbled with my keys, my hand shaking so badly I could barely get the door open. Once inside, I locked every door and called 911. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They searched the trail. Found nothing. No footprints in the dirt. No sign of anyone. But they did find something. About 50 feet from where I'd stopped to tie my shoe. There was a hunting knife lying in the grass. Serrated blade. Still sharp. The officer who showed it to me said it looked like it had been recently cleaned. I never ran that trail again. Hell, I barely run at all anymore. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about that man. That smile. And I wonder, How many times had he been following me before that morning? How many runs had I finished, completely unaware that someone was just a few steps behind me in the fog, waiting for the right moment? I'll never know. But I do know this. I got lucky that day. Not everyone does. My name is Becca, and I need to tell you about the worst decision I ever made, walking home alone at night. It was 3 summers ago. I was 23, fresh out of college, working a late shift at a diner just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. My shift ended at 11 p.m., and normally my roommate Rachel would pick me up. But that night, her car had broken down, and I didn't want to bother her. The walk home was only about 30 minutes. Straight shot down Maple Avenue, then a left onto my street. I'd driven it 100 times. It seemed safe enough. God, I was so stupid. The first 15 minutes were fine. The street was well lit. A few cars passed by. Everything felt normal. But then I turned onto Maple Avenue, and the streetlights, they were out. All of them. Just this long stretch of darkness ahead of me, with trees lining both sides of the road. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and kept walking. That's when I heard the car. It came up slowly behind me. I could hear the engine idling, crawling along at maybe 5 miles per hour. I moved to the side of the road to let it pass. It didn't pass. It just stayed there, keeping pace with me. I glanced over my shoulder. It was an old sedan, dark green or maybe black. Hard to tell in the dim light. The windows were tinted. I couldn't see who was driving. My stomach twisted. I picked up my pace. The car sped up too. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe they were just going slow because the street was dark. Maybe they were lost. But then, why not just pass me? Why stay right there, crawling along beside me? I stopped walking and turned to face the car, ready to wave them past or ask if they needed help. The car stopped too. We just sat there, me standing on the side of the road, heart hammering in my chest. The car idling 10 feet away, headlights off, engine rumbling. Then the driver's side door opened. I didn't wait to see who got out. I ran. I cut across someone's front yard, jumping over a low fence, my phone clutched in my hand. Behind me, I could hear footsteps pounding on the pavement. Heavy, fast. I didn't scream. I don't know why. I just ran. I made it to the next street over and ducked behind a parked truck, pressing myself flat against the side, trying to control my breathing. My lungs were on fire. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I listened. The footsteps had stopped. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd lost him. Maybe he'd given up. Then I heard it, whistling, a slow, casual tune, like someone without a care in the world. And it was getting closer. He wasn't running anymore. He was walking, taking his time, because he knew I was there. He knew I was hiding. I peeked around the edge of the truck. He was maybe 20 feet away, standing under a streetlight now. I finally got a good look at him. Tall, maybe 6'3", wearing a dark jacket and jeans. But what made my skin crawl was his posture. He was relaxed, hands in his pockets, head tilted slightly, like he was enjoying this. He stopped whistling. "I can see you, Becca," he said. My blood went ice cold. He knew my name. I bolted again, this time toward a house with lights still on. I ran up the driveway and started pounding on the door, screaming for help. An older man answered, confused and alarmed, and I practically shoved past him, begging him to call the police. He did. They arrived 10 minutes later. By then, the man was gone. The car was gone, like he'd never been there at all. But here's the part that still keeps me up at night. The police checked the security cameras from a nearby house. They found footage of me running, footage of me hiding behind the truck. But there was no one chasing me. No man, no car, nothing. The officer said maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was the stress, the darkness, my mind playing tricks. But I heard him. I saw him. And he knew my name. 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name handwritten on the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. It was me, walking home that night, taken from behind, and written on the back in red ink, "Next time, don't run." I moved out of that apartment a month later. Changed my number. I don't walk anywhere alone anymore. Ever. But sometimes, late at night, I'll hear whistling outside my window, and I'll wonder if he's still out there, waiting. My name is Aaron Clark, and this happened 2 years ago, during the fall, when I used to take long evening walks to clear my head. I wasn't much of a jogger, but walking kept me sane. At least it used to. This is the story I've been trying not to remember, but some nights I still hear it breathing behind me. I live in a small town in Northumberland, the kind of place where the streetlights get sparse the farther you walk from the center. My usual route was a loop that passed through a wooded path behind an old rugby field. Harmless enough. I'd walked it 100 times, but on this particular night, I left home later than usual, around 10:45 p.m. cold air. No wind. Everything felt too still. As soon as I reached the start of the wooded trail, I noticed something new. A pair of shoes, just sitting in the middle of the path. Black running shoes, perfectly placed, like someone had stepped out of them and kept walking barefoot. I thought maybe a drunk had passed through. This town had its fair share, but 10 steps past the shoes, I found a pair of socks, carefully folded, the kind of careful that didn't fit the situation. I should have turned around. I know that now, but I kept walking. About 30 yards in, the trail curved sharply to the left, and that's when I first heard it. A soft, strained breathing, human but wrong, like someone was forcing air in and out through a tightened throat. I froze. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" No answer, just that steady breathing, until it stopped completely. Then the woods went dead silent. When I stepped forward again, my foot hit something soft. I aimed my phone flashlight down and nearly dropped the phone. It was a sweatshirt, still warm, and right beside it, a set of footprints. Bare footprints. Huge ones. I'm a size 11, and these prints dwarfed mine by at least 3 inches on each side. But here's what really made my stomach drop. They weren't human-shaped. They were long, almost narrow, with too many indentations that didn't line up with toes. I backed away slowly. Then I heard sticks snapping deeper in the woods. Not like someone walking, more like something dragging itself. I turned and started walking back toward the field. Calm, controlled, telling myself not to run. But then it exhaled behind me, directly behind me. A long, rattled breath that brushed the back of my neck like someone leaning inches from my skin. I ran. The moment I started sprinting, it started too. Not footsteps, not human movement, but a rapid thumping, like something massive using its limbs to bound across the ground. Every few seconds, it let out this wet, huffing grunt, like it struggled to swallow its own breath. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The second I hit the open field, the sound stopped. Dead. I turned around, panting, scanning the darkness. Nothing. No movement. No breathing. Just the tree line. But then, 2 faint, pale shapes appeared between the trunks. Eyes. Reflective, like a cat but higher up. Too high. 8 feet off the ground. I staggered backward until I reached the street, and only then did the eyes vanish. I don't even remember walking home. I just remember locking every door and sitting awake until sunrise. When daylight came, I went back, stupidly, thinking maybe I'd imagined it. The shoes were gone. The socks, gone. The sweatshirt, gone. But the footprints, those were still there. Except now, they didn't just appear on the trail. They circled around it, over and over, like something pacing, waiting, and embedded deep into the dirt in the center of the loop. Were 2 perfectly round knee impressions, but they were wrong. They were backward, bent the wrong way, That night, I didn't walk. Didn't even leave my room. But around 2 a.m., someone knocked on my door. 3 slow knocks. I looked out the peephole, nothing. Not a person. Just empty hallway. Then, through the wood, I heard it. That same tight, rattled breathing, like something pressing its face to the door. Listening. Waiting. I moved a month later. I've never walked at night again. But every so often, on quiet nights, I feel that breath on my neck again. And it reminds me, whatever followed me out of that forest never stayed there. My name is Emily Foster, and I used to jog every morning before sunrise. I loved the peace, the rhythm, the empty streets. Now I can't step outside before daylight, because of what followed me last winter, because of what still tries to follow me. I lived in a coastal town in Maine, and winter mornings were pitch dark. Streetlights were dim, fog rolled in heavy, and the air always smelled like salt and frozen seaweed. My route was a simple loop around the harbor. Boats creaking, water sloshing. Kind of ambience that felt comforting. Until it didn't. One morning at around 5:10 a.m., I noticed someone running ahead of me. Tall, slender, wearing a gray hoodie with the hood up. Nothing unusual, except for the fact that they weren't running regularly. Their movements were stiff, jerky, like every step was slightly off balance. I slowed down. They slowed down. I sped up. They sped up. Eventually, I stopped completely, pretending to tie my shoe, and the figure up ahead stopped too. No hesitation, just an immediate mechanical halt. I swear my stomach almost dropped through the sidewalk. I turned around and decided to take a shortcut through a residential street. I figured that would shake them off. But 3 blocks later, I saw the same figure, standing completely still at the end of the street, facing me. No jogging now, just standing. At this point, panic was hitting my throat. I didn't want to show fear, so I kept jogging, pretending not to notice. When I passed a house with bright porch lights, I risked a glance behind me. They were closer, much closer, and I could finally see their face. Or rather, what should have been their face. The hood cast a shadow, but there was no definition underneath. No nose, no mouth, just a smooth, pale shape, like skin stretched too tight. I broke into a sprint. I ran harder than I ever had, nearly slipping on frozen patches of sidewalk. Every time I looked back, the figure was closer, not running normally, but lurching forward in long, unnatural strides, like something trying to imitate a human, but failing. When I reached the harbor again, I ducked behind a stack of lobster traps and pressed my hand over my mouth to stay quiet. For a moment, there was nothing. Silence. Fog. Water. Then I heard footsteps. Slow. Right on the pavement. They stopped directly in front of the traps. I peeked through the netting and saw their legs. Wrong. Bent slightly outward, like they'd been broken and never healed properly. And then the head turned. Not the body. Just the head, rotating smoothly, too smoothly, like a camera on a swivel. It scanned the traps, left to right, then right to left. Then it leaned forward slightly, sniffing, like it could smell me. I waited until it turned its head away. Then I bolted across the street and into a diner that had just opened for breakfast. The waitress asked if I was okay. I couldn't speak. I just pointed out the window, but the street was empty. Completely. I stayed there for an hour before going home. I didn't jog for 3 weeks. On the first morning, I finally worked up the courage to try again. I stepped out onto my porch at 6 a.m. and immediately froze. There, on my front steps, was a gray hoodie, folded neatly, and beneath it, a piece of paper. I unfolded it with shaking hands and nearly dropped it. It wasn't a note. It wasn't writing. It was an imprint, an impression of a face, a smooth, stretched, featureless face, as if something had pressed its head against the paper hard enough to leave an outline. I moved out of that town 3 months later, but sometimes when I wake up before dawn, I swear I hear footsteps outside, and the soft scrape of something tall, leaning against my door, breathing, waiting. My name is Lucas Reed, and I used to jog through a state forest near my home in Vermont. It was beautiful, quiet trails, clear streams, rolling hills. But last spring, the park closed off one section of the forest. No explanation, just signs, chains, and warnings to keep out. Naturally, I didn't listen, and I wish to God I had. The closed-off section bordered a steep ravine. Locals whispered about sinkholes, unstable ground, maybe bears. But the real reason? No one admitted to knowing. I'd been jogging that morning like usual when I reached the barricade. The chain was loose, hanging open just slightly. Not cut, not broken, just unhooked. Like someone or something had come through. Curiosity got the better of me. I slipped past and ran the trail. The air changed immediately. Colder, denser, like walking into a basement. About half a mile in, I found the first sign something was wrong. A tree stripped of bark on one entire side. Not torn, not clawed, stripped clean down to smooth wood, like something had scraped against it with enormous force. I kept running, telling myself it was natural damage. Then I saw the second tree, then the third, all stripped the same way, forming a path. A corridor, leading deeper. I should have turned around, but I didn't. Eventually, the trail opened into a wide clearing, and that's where I saw it. A perfectly circular pit in the ground, about 20 feet wide, and around the edges, dozens of footprints. Jogging footprints, people's footprints, all leading toward the pit, none leading away. I stepped closer, peering into the darkness. It wasn't deep, maybe 8 feet, but the bottom was covered in leaves, soil, and what looked like dead branches. Then something moved under the leaves, just slightly, like something breathing underneath. I backed up instantly. Then I heard a noise from behind me. Not footsteps, not an animal, but a wet stretching sound, like me being pulled apart. When I turned, I saw someone standing at the tree line. A jogger, or something shaped like one. He wore running clothes, but wrong. The shirt was inside out. Shoes on the wrong feet. Arms hanging too low. Fingertips nearly touching his knees. His head twitched when he saw me, snapping slightly sideways, like he didn't know how to control it. Then he opened his mouth, or tried to. It stretched too far, widening like rubber. No sound came out except a thin, wet wheeze. I ran. Behind me, I heard multiple things climbing out of the pit, scrambling, slapping, dragging. Not one thing, but several. The forest erupted in sound, branches snapping, leaves thrashing, things running, but not in rhythm. Not like humans, like things trying to mimic running. I could hear them getting closer, some crawling, some limping, some bounding in huge, uneven strides. Every time I looked back, I saw more shapes emerging from the trees. Arms too long, heads jerking at strange angles, bodies moving like broken puppets, all wearing pieces of clothing that once belonged to joggers. It hit me too late. Those weren't stolen clothes. They were taken. I ran until I burst past the barricade and back onto the public trail. The moment I crossed the boundary, the noises stopped. Completely. Not one of them crossed the line. They just stood in the trees, watching, some tilting their heads, some twitching, all silent. I reported what I saw. The park rangers didn't believe me, but the next day, the entire forest trail system was closed indefinitely. Last week, I went back just to see the entrance. There was a fresh sign. Trail closed due to multiple missing joggers. Ongoing investigation. Below it, something was taped to the post. A running shoe. A brand new one. A man's size 12. The same brand I wear. The same model. The same color. My exact shoe. Except I've never lost a shoe. Never dropped one. Never left one behind. which means something else. Whatever's in that forest has been close enough to me to take something from me without me knowing. I don't jog anymore, but some nights, when the wind blows from the direction of the forest, I hear something moving through the trees. Slow, uneven footsteps, like they're still practicing, still learning how to run, still waiting for me to come back.